Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. If it wasn't for double standards, then Democrats would have no standards at all. That's the saying, and it's a saying because it's true. Like I always say, friends, absolute hypocrites. You know, if we're to take you Democrats seriously, then you need at least a little bit of consistency in your value system, in your policies, in your talking points. But it's a bunch of incoherent, inconsistent garbage. They're constantly contradicting themselves and constantly being exposed as the highest level of hypocrite. And boy, do I have a moment to show you guys today from inside the House of Representatives, where our friend Jerry Nadler, or Gerald Nadler, House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Jerry Nadler was left a stumbling mess when faced with a very simple question, actually, and it just goes to show you how inconsistent Democrat rhetoric is. Let me show you guys exactly what Jerry Nadler said, and of course, let's talk about why he's a complete hypocrite and why it makes absolutely no sense. Of course, we've got some stuff to get into, but before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so take a look at this. Watch. Jerry Nadler claims 18-year-olds are too young for guns, but won't raise the draft age to 21.
We recognize different ages for different purposes. We recognize 18 for the draft. We recognize 16 for driving in some states. We recognize 21 for drinking. So we recognize different ages for different purposes. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Could I have a second to engage that?
Certainly. I'll yield to the gentleman from Kentucky.
Would the chairman join me in co-sponsoring a bill to raise the draft age to 21?
No.
But the chairman feels that their brains aren't fully formed at 18, 19, and 20.
The research does indicate that in certain respects, but the Selective Service needs, I mean, if the country needs people, it needs people.
It needs people whose brains aren't fully formed?
In certain respects, yes.
I yield back.
Hoping that mine is fully formed at 40.
I hope so.
Do you, Mr. Gates?
I hope so.
Yeah, we won't put that to a vote.
Wise, very wise.
I mean, just basic stuff, folks, asking for ideological consistency. But of course, these Democrats prove to be utterly incoherent and inconsistent at the same time on so many different issues. The argument right now is that the age to purchase a firearm should be raised to 21 rather than 18, and their reasoning is, of course, to save the children, and the logic is that 18-year-olds don't have fully developed brains. They're not mature enough, but you're definitely mature enough for Jerry Nadler to send you overseas fighting ridiculous battles, sacrificing young Americans, young American boys, as young as 18. And when it comes to the appropriate age to do something or participate in something, Democrats are all over the place. But 18 to fight in the deep state's foreign battles. But then of course when it comes to voting, Democrats want to lower the voting age to 16, because I don't know, racism or something. 18-year-olds don't have fully developed brains is what the Democrats tell you. Again, they don't have access to constitutional rights, but apparently 5-year-olds, according to Democrats, are allowed to choose whatever identity they want and undergo whatever irreversible medical procedures. Well, apparently their brains are developed enough for that at 5 years old in some cases. Well, apparently when they're under the age of 18, their brains are developed enough for that, and it shows you just how hypocritical these Democrats are. And once again, this idea that changing the age by 3 years is really going to change anything, it's just ridiculous. It's once again not going to do anything. And it's all highlighting yet again another massive level of hypocrisy with the Democrats in the stance that they're taking. They keep saying the Democrat proposal right now is to outright ban the ownership of an AR-15. That's really what Democrats want. In fact, Joe Biden is going as far as saying that any firearm with a 15-round clip should be banned. Hillary Clinton just tweeted, "No one actually needs an AR-15." Well, apparently, no one actually needs an AR-15, except for maybe Ukrainians and maybe the Taliban. You know, that lovely group in Afghanistan that Joe Biden donated basically billions of dollars of munitions and AR-15s too. And here's the hypocrisy. You know, Democrats keep trying to convince you that Russia is an existential threat and Vladimir Putin is a real existential threat to your existence, but simultaneously they're arguing that you should be unarmed, or disarmed is probably a better way to say it. I mean, which one is it? Pick your side. Are we in grave threat of tyranny and the collapse of democracy and the threat that is the resurgence of the Soviet Union? That's what Democrats keep telling us, and if that's the case, then you definitely need an AR-15. And once again, it proves one thing, that Democrats are not convincing anyone with their arguments. And I think even a bunch of far leftists and even a bunch of Democrats aren't aligned with Democrat messaging on this issue. I mean, for Pete's sakes, even Karl Marx himself, the inventor of communism, was a staunch advocate for an armed populace. But it seems almost like Democrats think this is going to be a winning message for them. But of course we know that it's not, as gun sales top 1 million for the 34th straight month in a row. If anything, after 2020, the American populace is more pro-gun than ever before. So the question is, why is it that Democrats would be taking this stance? Well, it's very simple, friends. And it's the exact reason why the Second Amendment is there in the first place. They want a weak, disarmed populace that they can control. It's all about power. Why is it that the government and all of these deep state figures will be working so hard to disarm regular law-abiding citizens, not focusing specifically on tackling the issue, but rather sweeping legislation that targets regular folk and goes far beyond what would be necessary, with even Joe Biden recently saying he wants to go after 9mm handguns.
And they showed me a x-ray. He said a .22 caliber bullet will lodge in a lung, and we can probably get it out, may be able to get it and save the life. A 9mm bullet blows the lung out of the body. So the idea of these high caliber weapons is there's simply no rational basis for it in terms of about self-protection, hunting. And remember, the Constitution, the Second Amendment, was never absolute.
The reason Democrats want to repeal or reform the Second Amendment is because of what the Second Amendment stands for, and it stands in their way. There's just too much hypocrisy in their arguments. They are willing to say anything, and their legislation makes no sense. They're talking about weapons of war and assault weapons they can't clearly define either. And then their legislation is going after any weapon with a magazine capacity of 15 or more rounds. That's a whole lot of weapons. That's not just AR-15s. If the Democrats could do mass weapon confiscation, then they would. And as we have seen over the last 2 years, if the Democrats can get more power and more control over the population, they will always take that step, walk through that door, and they will never take a step back or give any rights back to you. And that's exactly why the Democrats aren't convincing anyone. The numbers aren't changing. No matter how many crises or issues they try to use and abuse, it just isn't working for them. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe. I'm gonna get back to work. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.